Have a seat, today's tea is bitter, but still sweeter than the price the villain in this story is about to pay. May's red ledger has just turned to a new page. Are you ready to claim justice with Reddit revenge tales? 8 years ago, I cheated on my husband, and I'm still paying for it. Ben found out I cheated, and he's been carrying it like a bruise that never stops getting pressed. People tell him move on. But how do you move on when the man I cheated with still shows up through family as he belongs there? He shows up through family barbecues, birthdays, holidays, smiling like nothing happened. And my husband, Ben. I watch Ben's face change the second Marshall walks in, and I realize the damage isn't over. He goes quiet in that dangerous way. No yelling, just a look that says I'm not safe with you. It's happening again right now. I'm Jessie. I'm in my early 40s, and I work as a nurse in a trauma rehab center. I live in a regular American suburb, where weekends mean errands, kids' sports, and trying to squeeze your whole life into 2 days. Ben is my husband. He drives a construction company truck long routes early mornings, and the kind of tired that sticks to you even after a shower. We have a son who is old enough to read a room before he reads a book. Most people would look at us and think we're fine. We still do family things. Like Tuesday nights when we grab KFC because I got home late and nobody has the energy to cook. Our son dips his fries in gravy. Ben picks at his food and I keep talking, like my voice can glue us together. Or Sunday mornings when Ben and I try to run in the park side by side, not really talking, just listening to our shoes hit the path and pretending the silence is peaceful. At home, we don't even always sleep in the same room. Some nights Ben stays in the guest room, not as a punishment, more like a habit we never fixed. Last weekend, my cousin texted about a backyard get-together. Ben leaned over my shoulder, read it once, then asked quietly, "Is Marshall going to be there?" And my stomach dropped, like I already knew the answer. That question followed me into the next day like a bad taste I couldn't brush out. Thursday morning, I was in the laundry room folding our son's jerseys, the dryer thumping steady, when Ben walked in holding his keys. He didn't look angry. He looked careful, like one wrong word would set something off in his chest. He said, "I'm not trying to start a fight. I just need you to be straight with me. If he's going to be there, tell me before we pull up." He paused, then added, "I can't do surprises like that anymore." I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say it's family, it's not like I invited Marshall. It's been years. But I also knew what Ben meant. He wasn't asking for reassurance. He was asking for safety. That night, Ben took his pillow to the guest room without slamming a door, without drama. I stood in our bedroom holding my phone, staring at my cousin's text thread, feeling the old guilt rise up like it never left. If you want to understand why Ben still reacts like this, I have to take you back to 8 years ago. Another night, I was back in the nursery, rocking my son while the rest of the house sat dark and quiet. Ben was asleep on the couch again, not because we agreed, but because neither of us wanted to risk another fight in the bedroom. I could hear the TV murmuring under his breathing like background noise, trying to pretend we were normal. My phone buzzed against the arm of the chair. I picked it up without thinking. A name I hadn't seen in years lit up my screen. Marshall, my high school sweetheart. The message was simple. "Hey, Jessie, I was thinking about you. How have you been? I should have ignored it." I knew that. I even sat there for a full minute with my thumb hovering, feeling the weight of my baby in my arms, and the weight of my marriage in my chest. But I was tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. I was lonely in a way a house full of people can't fix. So I typed back, "I'm okay, just busy with the baby." His reply came fast. I bet you're doing it all on your own. You always were strong. And I hated how good that felt. Not because it was true, but because someone finally said the words I kept swallowing. I looked toward the hallway where Ben was passed out, then back at my phone. And I didn't put it down. I didn't put the phone down that night. And it showed up in my body the next day. Like I'd done something wrong. Another evening, same house, same tired. I was in the kitchen with the overhead light too bright, scooping formula into a bottle with hands that felt clumsy from a long shift. My son was crying in that sharp. The bottle warmer beeped once then again, and it made my jaw tighten like it was blaming me. Marshall kept texting. Nothing dirty. Nothing obvious. That was the problem. It was all soft edges and attention. He asked about my shift. He asked if I ever slept. He said you were always the one who held everything together. And I felt myself unclench in places I didn't even know were tight. I told myself I was just talking. I told myself it was harmless, because it was words on a screen. But I started timing it. I started glancing at my phone the way you glance at a door, when you are waiting for someone to come home. Ben was in the living room with one leg crossed over the other, remote in his hand, watching the screen like it was the only thing asking him nothing. I said, "Can you please get him? I just need 2 minutes." Ben didn't move. He glanced over and said I worked all day too, Jessie. Something in me snapped cold. I picked up my son with one arm and my phone with the other, because that's what I had started doing. Holding everything. I opened Marshall's thread without meaning to, like my thumb knew where relief lived. His message was waiting. Do you ever feel like you married the wrong person? I stared at those words while my baby screamed against my shoulder, and my husband stayed seated 10 feet away. Saturday afternoon. I was in the bathroom with the door cracked, the fan humming, reading Marshall's message, while my son banged a plastic cup against the tub. Ben was outside in the driveway unloading his work bag, the metal buckle clinking his truck door, slamming harder than it needed to. By night, Ben had been drinking, not falling down drunk, but enough that his words got louder and his patience got thin. We argued in the living room with the lamp on low, and the baby finally asleep. Ben said, "You look at your phone like it is saving you." I said, "Maybe I would not need saving if you showed up." He stepped closer, not threatening, just too close, and pointed at my hand. "Let me see it," he said. I pulled it back on instinct. That was the moment I saw it in his face. Suspicion. Hurt. That flash of humiliation he didn't know how to name. I swallowed and lied like it was nothing. "It is just my cousin," I said. Then I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and deleted the thread with Marshall, watching the screen go blank, like I had erased the proof that I was slipping. When I came out, Ben was sitting down, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He said, "I do not know what is going on with you, but something is." And for the first time I realized I had a secret. The next message from Marshall came before I could breathe. That night in the kitchen with my baby crying against my shoulder, and Ben still planted on the couch, I answered Marshall. Another evening, same week, I was in the nursery, with the lights low sitting on the floor beside the crib, while the humidifier hissed, and my son finally settled. My phone lit up in my palm like it was the only thing that knew my name. Marshall wrote, "Let me take you out for coffee. Just talk. No drama." I stared at that message longer than I should have. I told myself I was stronger than that. I typed, "I can't. I'm married." And for a second I felt proud. Then I didn't block him. I didn't even mute him. I just set my phone face down like that made it disappear. Later that week, I came home from a brutal shift, the kind where you hear other people's pain all day and bring it home in your shoulders. The sink was full. The trash was overflowing. Ben was irritated before I even spoke. I snapped first because I always did back then. Ben snapped back harder because he always did too. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't flinch. I reached for it like a habit. Marshall wrote, "You do not have to live like this." And I felt my mouth whisper a yes before my fingers did. I typed, "Maybe sometime," and hit send. Right after that, Ben walked into the room. I could still feel my heart racing from that "maybe sometime" when I followed through. A couple of days later, in the late afternoon, I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot, not far from a main road, the kind of place where nobody looks twice at a tired mom in scrubs. I sat in my car with the engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal, staring at my wedding ring, like it might talk me out of it. Marshall texted, "I'm inside." I walked in anyway. He stood up when he saw me, smiling like we were 16 again, and nothing had ever gotten complicated. We talked about small things first. Work, old friends, how fast life moved. He kept his voice soft. He kept his eyes on me like I was the only person in the room. It felt good in a way that made me sick at the same time. He said, "You look exhausted. I hate that for you." And I surprised myself by swallowing hard, like I was about to cry in public. I didn't touch him. I didn't do anything you could point to as proof. But when I laughed, it came out easy, and that scared me more than anything. On the drive home, I practiced my normal face at red lights. When I opened the front door, Ben was in the living room with our son, and the sight of them hit me like a warning I didn't know how to obey. Then my phone buzzed again. That buzz after I walked back into my house felt louder than it should have. Another night, I was in our bedroom with the door half closed, sitting on the edge of the bed, while Ben was in the living room, bouncing our son on his knee. The baby was squealing. The TV was low and my phone kept lighting up in my hand like it had a heartbeat. Marshall texted like he already knew I would answer. Not romance novel lines. Just steady attention. How did it go tonight? Did he help? Are you okay? I told myself I could handle it. I told myself I was allowed to have a friend. I even made up rules in my head that sounded responsible, like if I said them out loud they would protect me. But the rules were a joke. I started waiting for his messages the way I used to wait for Ben to come home sober. I started smiling at my screen and hiding it when Ben walked by. Later that week, Ben stepped into the kitchen while I was rinsing bottles. He nodded at my phone and said, "Who keeps texting you like that?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. I didn't even pause. "It's nothing," I said too fast. Ben reached for my phone and I turned my body away like it was a reflex. That was the moment the air in the room changed, and I knew we were heading somewhere ugly. I could still feel how quick I twisted away when Ben reached for my phone. The next Saturday night we were in the living room lamp on baby monitor, hissing softly on the side table. Ben had been drinking, and I had been simmering for hours. We were both tired, both stubborn, both convinced the other person was the problem. Ben said, "You are acting shady, Jessie." "I am not stupid." I snapped back. "Do not talk to me about shady when you come home smelling like a bar, and think you get to sit down like you earned a medal." He stood up fast, the recliner footrest slamming shut. I stood up too because I never knew how to stay small. Ben pointed at the monitor and lowered his voice, but the anger was still there. "You have been gone even when you are standing right here." I said I have been alone in this marriage for months. He took a step toward the hallway like he might grab his keys, then stopped and said, "Tell me the truth. Who is it?" My phone buzzed right then like bad timing on purpose. I glanced down before I could stop myself. Ben saw it. His face went tight. "So it is real," he said. I grabbed my purse off the chair, hands shaking, and said the worst thing I could have said. "Maybe if you listened to me before, I would not need anyone else to." I walked out, shut the door behind me, and sat in my car in the driveway with my heart pounding so hard. It hurt. Then Marshall texted simple and deadly, "Where are you right now?" Marshall's text sat on my screen while I stared at my own front door, like my house was a test I was failing in real time. Saturday night, I was still in my car, in the driveway engine off porch, light buzzing, my hands wrapped around the steering wheel, like it could keep me steady. I could hear the faint tick of the cooling hood, and somewhere inside my baby monitor chirping through the window. I should have gone back in. Instead, I typed my location. 10 minutes later, I pulled into a quiet parking lot near a closed strip mall, the kind of place that feels empty, but not unsafe. Marshall was already there, leaning against his car phone in hand. When I walked up, he said, "You look like you have not slept in a year." I let out this ugly laugh that sounded more like a sob. He didn't touch me at first. He just stood close enough that I could smell his cologne clean and simple, nothing like beer. He said, "You do not have to beg to be cared about," and that line slid right into the part of me that was starving. I told him I cannot do this. He said, "Then do not. Just sit with me." We sat in his car, the radio off my phone buzzing with a missed call from Ben that I did not answer. And when Marshall reached over and took my hand, I did not pull away. Not yet. I kept hearing Ben's missed call in my head, even after my phone went quiet. The next day I was at home in the kitchen. Sunday afternoon light coming through the blinds, my son in his high chair smearing mashed food on the tray, while a cartoon played softly in the background. Ben was in the garage. I could hear tools clinking, and the heavy sound of him moving things around like he needed noise, so he would not have to talk. My own hands were shaking while I rinsed a bottle, not from fear of getting caught, but from knowing I was already not the woman I kept pretending to be. Marshall texted again, "I can stop if you want." That should have been my exit. Instead, it felt like an invitation to decide like I mattered, like I had control over something. I texted back, "I just need a break." Later that week, I told Ben I was running a quick errand. I did not say where. I did not say with who. I left my ring on like that made it less real. I met Marshall somewhere private, quiet, and easy to explain if anyone asked. I won't dress it up. I won't make it romantic. I crossed the line. It happened. After I sat in my car with my hands in my lap, staring at my steering wheel, feeling sick and strangely numb at the same time. When I got home, Ben was on the floor with our son stacking blocks. He looked up and smiled at me like I was safe. I smiled back, and something inside me cracked clean in half. Because I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth found us. That crack I felt when Ben smiled at me did not heal overnight. The next morning I was in the school drop-off line with my coffee, cooling in the cup holder and my hands gripping the steering wheel, like I could hold myself together through plastic and leather. Kids were hopping out of cars with backpacks bigger than their bodies, parents waving like everyone's home life was clean and simple. The crossing guard's whistle cut through the air sharp and cheerful, and I hated how normal it sounded. Ben was in the driver's seat this time, quiet eyes forward. Our son leaned between the seats to ask if we could do KFC later. I said yes too fast, like food could smooth out what we wouldn't talk about. My phone lit up on my lap. I flipped it face down the second I noticed the way you hide a bruise when someone looks your way. Ben's eyes moved just a flick, but it was enough. He didn't accuse me. He didn't ask. He just went still. When our son slammed the door and ran toward the building, Ben said softly, "You have been acting like you are carrying something heavy." Then he looked at the school like it was safer than looking at me. I need to know if I'm the only one trying to keep this family real. I swallowed and said I'm okay. But even in that line of minivans and morning sunlight, my body knew I was lying. My "I'm fine" stayed in the air like smoke. Another night the house was quiet except for the dryer thumping down the hall and my son's white noise machine hissing through the baby monitor. Ben was in the living room, folding a work shirt still in his boots, while I sat on the edge of the couch pretending to watch the show he picked. My phone was in my lap under a throw blanket like it was contraband. Marshall texted, "I miss talking to you." I didn't answer. I told myself I was done. I told myself I could shut this off and nobody would ever know. Then the screen lit up again. Another message, and my thumb moved before my brain did. Ben's hand came out of nowhere, not violent, just fast. He said, "Give me your phone, Jesse." I pulled it back, and the blanket slid off my knees onto the floor. He saw the name on the screen. His jaw tightened like he swallowed something bitter. He did not yell. He stood up and held his palm out steady. "Do not make me beg," he said. "If it is nothing, you will not fight me for it." I hesitated 1 second too long. Ben took the phone from my hand, and I felt the room tilt. He stared at the screen, and his face went blank in a way that scared me more than anger. The blank look on Ben's face didn't pass. It followed him into the next day like a shadow that refused to leave. Another evening he came home and the garage door rattled up, then down the chain motor whining like it was tired too. I was standing in the doorway between the garage and the house holding a basket of laundry, when Ben walked in with my phone in his hand. He didn't toss it. He didn't wave it around. He held it low like evidence he hated touching. He said, "I am going to ask you one time, Jesse, and I need you to answer like an adult. Who is Marshall?" The garage smelled like hot metal and motor oil. The overhead light made everything look harsher, including my face. I tried to step past him into the kitchen, and Ben shifted his body to block the doorway. Not aggressive, not grabbing me, just planting himself there so I couldn't run straight into excuses. The laundry basket bumped his work jacket hanging on a hook, and a zipper clinked small and loud. I said, "It is nothing. It is stupid." Ben's eyes tightened. "Stop," he said. "Do not shrink it to survive it." My throat closed. It started as messages, I admitted. Ben nodded once, like he expected that. Then his voice dropped. "Did you meet him?" And the way he watched me told me my next breath would decide what our marriage was. That pause was the loudest thing in the room. A little later we were in the kitchen. Midnight quiet, the refrigerator humming, and the tile cold under my feet. Ben set my phone on the counter between us like evidence. He kept his truck keys in his fist, the metal teeth digging into his palm like he needed something solid to hold on to. He said, "Look at me." When I lifted my eyes, he was crying without making a sound. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and said, "I have been the bad guy in this house for months, and now I am supposed to pretend. I am imagining this." I tried to reach for him and he stepped back. Not cruel, just protective. He picked up the phone again and scrolled farther than I wanted him to. I heard the tiny tap-tap of his thumb on glass, and each tap felt like it was peeling my life open. Then he stopped and turned the screen toward me. I saw it plain as day. Marshall's name. A thread of messages I thought I had buried still there in a place I forgot to clean. Ben's voice cracked. "So I was right," he said. "I was not crazy." I whispered, "Ben, please." He shook his head and said, "Do not say please. Tell me what I need to know." He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, and asked the question I had been running from. Was it only talking Jessie, or did you take it further? And the way he said it told me he already knew the answer was going to hurt. Ben's question hung there heavy and clean, like it deserved a clean answer. We were still in the kitchen at midnight, the fridge humming, the baby monitor giving off that soft static from the living room. Ben was across from me, shoulders tight, my phone on the counter between us like a blade. I could hear my own breath and the faint clink of his keys shifting in his fist. I tried to speak, and nothing came out at first. My throat closed, like my body was trying to protect me from what my mouth was about to do. Ben said, "I need the truth, Jessie. I cannot live in half-truths." I nodded once, and that nod felt like a confession all by itself. I said yes. I met him. And yes, I crossed the line. The words sounded flat, like they belonged to someone else. Ben stared at me, blinking hard, and then his face folded. He did not scream. He just leaned back against the counter like his legs stopped trusting him. I panicked. I grabbed for something to explain it. I said you were drinking all the time. I felt alone. I did not know how to reach you. Ben's head snapped up. His voice got sharp for the first time all night. "So you used my problem as permission to destroy us." He slammed his keys down on the counter, metal ringing, then picked them back up with shaking hands. He whispered, "I do not even know who I married." And then he walked out the front door. The front door closing behind Ben didn't sound dramatic. It sounded final. I stood on the front porch in bare feet, the night air cold on my skin, watching his truck sit at the curb with the engine idling. The porch light washed everything in that pale yellow that makes you feel exposed. Inside the house was quiet except for the faint static from the baby monitor and a cartoon theme song still running in the background, because I hadn't even thought to turn it off. Ben didn't drive away. He just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead, like he was trying to keep himself from braking in front of our own driveway. I went back inside and checked on our son, then stood in the kitchen with my phone on the counter, like it might bite. That's when it buzzed. Marshall. His message was simple. "Are you okay?" My chest tightened with anger and shame. I typed, "Do not contact me again," and my finger hovered because I wanted the sentence to mean something. Marshall replied so fast it felt rehearsed. "I didn't force you, Jessie. Don't make me the villain." That line hit me in the gut. Not because it was true, but because it was convenient. He got to walk away clean while my husband sat outside in the dark, trying to decide if his life was still his. Through the window, Ben finally put the truck in gear. For a second, I truly believed he was leaving for good. I thought he was leaving for good, and that fear sat in my mouth like metal. A few minutes later, I heard the truck door shut again. It was still the same night, still dark, and I was standing in the kitchen with the baby monitor on the counter, my hands wet from rinsing a bottle. Ben opened the front door without slamming it. He walked in slow, like every step cost him something. He did not look at me at first. He went straight down the hall to our son's room. I followed, staying a few feet behind him. In the nursery, the nightlight made everything look softer than it was. Ben leaned over the crib and just stared. Then he slid his hands under our son and lifted him up like he was made of glass. Our baby stirred and made a little sound, and Ben's face did something I will never forget. It wasn't anger. It was grief. He turned to me holding our son against his chest and said, "What did you do to us, Jesse? What did you do to him?" I reached out and Ben shifted his body away. Not aggressive, just instinctive, like my touch burned now. He whispered, "I do not know if this house is real anymore." And I realized I had not just betrayed Ben. I had shaken the ground our child was standing on. Ben's words about not feeling safe didn't fade with time. They settled into our routine. The next day, we still had to buy groceries. We still had to feed a child who didn't understand why his parents sounded tired, even when they weren't arguing. Another afternoon, we were in the grocery store, pushing the cart down the cereal aisle, while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the wheels squeaked on every turn. Our son was in the child seat, chewing on a snack, pointing at boxes like it was the biggest decision in the world. Ben walked beside me close but not touching, like there was a line on the floor we weren't allowed to cross. He didn't ask about my day. I didn't ask about his. We talked in safe sentences. Milk, bread, what time we needed to be home. At checkout, the scanner beeped over and over, fast and sharp. The cashier asked, "How are you?" And I said good, because that's what you say in public, when your insides are not good at all. Ben stared at the credit card machine like it could explain something. When it asked for a signature, his hand shook just a little. He said quietly without looking at me, "We are doing life. We are not doing trust." I wanted to reach for him. I didn't. He didn't move away because I didn't move. That's what staying looked like. Functioning, paying, smiling at strangers, and bleeding in silence. That sentence, "I do not feel safe with you," did not start a fight. It started a slow life. A few years later, we were still in the same house, but we lived like roommates who shared a child and a mortgage. One evening I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing a plate, while the faucet ran steady, and Ben was at the table sorting mail into piles without looking at me. Our son was in the next room laughing at a cartoon, and that sound felt almost cruel, because it was so light. We stopped talking about what happened. Not because it didn't matter, but because every time it came up it turned toxic fast. Ben would go quiet and sharp at the same time. I would get defensive and start explaining like explanations could put the trust back. People around us acted like time was a cure. Family would say it was so long ago. Friends would say if you stayed, you chose to forgive. I nodded along because it sounded easier than admitting the truth. Ben did not forgive. He endured, and I kept mistaking endurance for healing. But something else started growing in the silence. It was resentment. Not loud, not dramatic. It showed up in small questions, in the way Ben watched doors at family gatherings, in the way he asked who would be there before he agreed to go anywhere. And then last weekend my cousin's text lit up my phone again. My cousin's message hit my screen like a tap on an old bruise. Saturday morning I was in the front passenger seat, while Ben drove our son in the back seat, kicking his sneakers against the floor mat, asking if we could get KFC after errands. The sun was bright, the kind that makes everything look fine whether it is or not. My phone chimed and I glanced down. It was a group text about a backyard get-together at my cousin's place. Just food, family, kids running around. Normal. The kind of normal I tried to hide behind. Ben's eyes flicked to my phone for half a second at a red light. He didn't ask what it said. He already knew the pattern. He pulled into a parking spot, put the truck in park, and the engine ticked softly while he stared straight ahead. He said, "Before you answer, I need you to tell me something. Is Marshall going to be there?" I felt my throat tighten, because the honest answer was not about facts. It was about my fear. If I said yes, I would ruin the day before it started. If I said no, and I was wrong, I would ruin something bigger. Our son leaned forward between the seats and asked, "Are we going or not?" Ben didn't look back at him. He looked at me and said, "Jesse, do not do the surprise thing." Not again. And I realized this was the moment we always avoided, so I opened the thread and started typing. I stared at that group text with my thumbs hovering. Then I did the thing I always do when I'm scared. I said yes anyway. Saturday afternoon, we pulled up to my cousin's house, with store-bought cookies on my lap, and our son talking in the back seat about chicken tenders. Ben parked at the curb and sat there, an extra second engine ticking his fingers, tapping the steering wheel, like he was counting down to something he didn't want to face. The backyard smelled like charcoal and sweet sauce. Kids ran through the grass, a speaker played old R&B, and my cousin waved like she was hosting a normal day. Ben put on his work smile, the one that keeps people from asking questions. Then I saw Marshall by the cooler, laughing with a couple guys' plastic cup in hand, like he had every right to stand there. When Ben noticed his whole body changed, he didn't step toward him. He didn't say a word. He crushed a soda can in his hand, slow and quiet, like he was trying to keep the brake inside him. Marshall looked up and gave Ben a small nod. Ben nodded back because he is polite, even when he is hurting. Marshall didn't leave it there. He stepped closer, voice friendly, eyes steady. "Good to see you, man," he said to Ben. "It's been a long time." Ben stared at him for half a second too long, then turned his eyes to me, and I knew we had just crossed into the part of the day that never stays calm. A little later, I was by the picnic table trying to help my son open a ketchup packet, the plastic tearing with that stubborn snap, while Ben stood a few steps away pretending to watch the kids. His eyes kept tracking the yard, like he was counting exits. Someone said Marshall's name again, casual, like it was nothing. Then one of my relatives laughed and tossed out a joke about him being single, about how he was always around, about how he was such a good guy. It wasn't meant to be cruel. That's what made it worse. It was the kind of joke people make when they have no idea what they are poking. Ben's hand tightened around his cup. He set it down on the table harder than he needed to, and the ice jumped. A few heads turned. My cousin made a face like, "What's his problem?" Ben looked at me, not angry at first, just tired. Then it sharpened. He stepped in front of me so I couldn't keep drifting away from him and said low, "This is what you call the past." I tried to whisper, "Please not here." Ben shook his head once. "You picked here when you kept letting him show up," he said. Then he glanced toward the driveway and back at me. "You can worry about what your family thinks, or you can worry about your husband. Pick one." And the way he said it told me he was done swallowing it. Ben's pick one landed in my chest and stayed there. Saturday afternoon, we were still in my cousin's backyard, my son wiping sauce on a napkin. The speaker still playing, like nothing serious was happening. Ben didn't shout. He didn't curse. He did something worse for a family party. He got calm. He reached behind him, took our son's little hand and said, "Buddy, we're going home." Our son blinked up at him. "But I'm not done," he said. Ben answered, "I am." And that was it. I stepped in front of Ben, trying to keep my voice low. "Please not like this." Ben looked past me, straight at my cousin, and said in a normal tone, "Thanks for having us. We're heading out." The normal tone made everyone turn and stare because you only talk that polite when you are holding something in. My cousin frowned. "What is his problem?" she asked loud enough. I felt my face burn. Ben opened the gate and held it wide, not for me, for our son. Then he looked at me and said, Either you come with your family, or you stay here and keep saving face. I am not doing this anymore." I followed, legs shaking because my pride suddenly felt cheap, and as we walked past the cooler, I saw Marshall watching quiet like he was observing the damage from a safe distance. The drive home was all windshield and silence. By the time we got back, the sun was lower, and the house felt too still, like it knew what was coming. Ben carried our son inside, set him down with a snack, and turned on a show. Then he walked into the kitchen and stood there with both hands on the counter, staring at the wall like he was holding himself together by force. I stayed in the doorway, not wanting to crowd him, not wanting to look like I was running away. The refrigerator hummed. The clock over the stove ticked loud enough to be annoying. Ben finally said I am done pretending this is fine. He turned and looked at me, eyes clear and hard. Every time he shows up, it is like you drag me back to that night and tell me to swallow it again. I started to explain the same way I always do when I feel guilty. Ben lifted his hand and cut me off. I do not need another reason. I need you to protect this marriage. I asked, "What does that look like to you?" My voice shook. Ben said, "It looks like you stop saying 'don't worry.' It looks like you tell me the truth before we walk into a room. It looks like you stop allowing any situation where that man has access to you." He paused, then said the sentence that made my stomach drop. "If you cannot do that, I will protect myself. And you will not like how that ends." Ben's line, "I will protect myself," kept echoing like a door about to slam. That night, I was in our bedroom, with the hallway, light spilling under the door. Ben in the kitchen rinsing a mug, water running steady. I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in both hands, thumbs hovering, feeling 12 years old and 42 at the same time. I opened my cousin's thread first. I stared at the little typing bubble, like it was going to judge me. Then I wrote, "I love you, but we are not coming to anything if Marshall is there." I deleted it, wrote it again, hit send before I could get brave enough to back out. A reply came fast. "Why are you being dramatic?" My face burned, but I didn't soften it. I texted, "This is my marriage. I am not negotiating it at a barbecue." Then I opened Marshall's thread. My stomach rolled. I typed, "Do not contact me again." I blocked him, and the screen went quiet. No last word, no explanation, just silence. I walked back to the kitchen, held my phone out to Ben, and said, "You do not have to guess any more." Ben looked at the blocked screen, then at me, and for the first time in years, he didn't look like he was bracing for a lie. The quiet in that kitchen felt different after I handed him my phone. Later that night, we were at the dining table with the overhead light off one small lamp on our son asleep down the hall. Ben sat across from me with his hands flat on the tabletop fingertips, pressed into the wood like he needed to feel something real. I could hear the ice maker drop cubes sharp and sudden like punctuation. Ben didn't start with anger. He started with shame. He said, "Do you know what it did to me? When you blamed my drinking that night, I tried to answer, and he held up his hand. 'Let me finish,' he said. It made me feel like the whole world could point at me and say I deserved it, like I was the reason you chose him." His eyes went wet, and he looked away fast, like crying was a weakness he refused to give me for free. "I felt humiliated," he said, "and then I had to keep showing up. Work, family, smiling, acting normal, while my stomach was on fire," I whispered. "I did that, and I meant it. No excuses." Ben nodded once. "I am not asking you to erase the past," he said. I am asking you to stop letting it walk into our present." He reached across the table not to hold my hand, just to slide my phone back to me. "Show me with actions," he said. "Not words." I swallowed hard, and said I will. And when he didn't immediately pull away, I realized we were standing at the edge of something. Not closure. A chance. But I also knew the next part would be the hardest, proving it when nobody was watching. I used to think time would handle it. 8 years would dull it. A good routine, a shared mortgage, a child growing up in a stable home. But watching Ben at that table, hearing him say the word humiliated, I finally understood something I had been dodging for years. Time doesn't heal betrayal. Time only gives you more chances to either repair it or reopen it. Here's what I learned the hard way. If you are the one who cheated, your apology is not the finish line. It is the beginning of a long, quiet job rebuilding safety. Not with speeches, not with trust me, with choices that remove doubt, with consistency that your partner can feel in their body. If you are the one who was betrayed, you are not weak for still hurting when reminders keep showing up. That is not holding a grudge. That is your mind refusing to relax in a place that still feels risky. And the most uncomfortable truth is this. A marriage can survive an affair and still bleed for years if nobody changes the conditions that allowed it. Love is real, but love without protection is not enough. Repair requires honesty that stings boundaries that cost you pride and respect, that shows up when it would be easier to keep the peace. All right, let May be painfully clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern, and it showed up fast. A stranger asked you something stupid at a bar, you said no, and Mark turned you from wife to suspect. That's red flag number 1, suspicion, without proof. Then he started the classic toxic combo, moving the goalpost, demanding the truth after you already gave it, and treating your calm as evidence. That's not concern. That's control wearing a suit. And when someone blocks the exit, when your "I need air" becomes "why are you running?" that's not love. That's a power test. The moment he rewrote the story, you pushed me, you escalated. That's gaslighting 1. Oh, 1. Not loud, not messy, just cold, tidy cruelty. So here's your takeaway straight up. Your no is a full sentence. You don't audition for basic respect. You don't negotiate reality with someone who benefits from you doubting yourself. If you're hearing this and your stomach drops, trust that. Red flags don't get greener with time. To the villain of this story, karma doesn't need your permission. It just keeps receipts. And to you, sweetheart, this debt May clears it. But remember, these eyes are always watching. Don't let your name end up on May's blacklist next episode. Hit subscribe, because around here, justice doesn't show up late. It shows up ready. A final note from the library. While these stories find their roots in the halls of Reddit, they are artistically reimagined to speak to the heart. Any likeness to reality is mere coincidence. The emotions, however, are very real. Walk with empathy and let justice lead the way. Thank you for watching.